Good afternoon and welcome. I'm Sandra Peart, the Dean of the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, and I have to tell you that this is one of my favorite weekends. I'm always a little bit sad to see our students go, but I'm so very proud of all that they've achieved. This event, finale, bookends one that we hold in the fall of their sophomore year, Prelude. 2.5 years ago, we welcomed our graduating class at that ceremony. The time since then has flown by. Graduating seniors, I want to congratulate you on everything that you've achieved. Before we move to our awards, though, I would like to recognize some people who made all of this possible. I'd like all of the faculty and staff of the Jepson School who are here today to stand. These are the people who organize all of the events that you've enjoyed for the past 4 years, and as well who have inspired you and challenged you for the last 4 years. So faculty and staff, if you could stand, let's recognize them. Parents, brothers and sisters, aunts and uncles, grandparents, friends of our soon-to-be graduates, welcome to this ceremony. Welcome to the University of Richmond. Welcome to the Jepson School of Leadership Studies. And please know that we appreciate everything you've done to help our students succeed. After the ceremony, I hope you'll have a chance to talk to those faculty members and our staff at the reception that will follow this. Jepson students, I'm going to call you that for yet one more day. Congratulations to all of you. The Jepson School graduating class is made up of 57 majors and 11 minors. By way of comparison, in 2008, we had 36 majors and 28 minors. You've served on the Honor Council as RAs, you've worked on student organizations, you've been part of student government associations. You're varsity athletes and club athletes. You're now heading to positions at Deloitte Consulting, Teach for America, Barclays, Profit, the Peace Corps. The list goes on. You will go to graduate programs to study law at the University of Richmond, journalism at Columbia, and the New Jersey Moore Field, I have to check my notes for this one, the Field Guide College, where apparently you're going to learn to be a safari guide. One of you is not at our ceremony today because he's in Detroit. We excused him because he's at the rookie training camp for the Detroit Lions. Yes. You will join over 1,000 extraordinary Jepson alumni, some of whom are here today, who live in many states and many countries. You'll soon use your Jepson education to change the world, to make it better. Whatever you do in the future, we know that you'll be ethical, that you'll be leaders, that you'll have the energy, the desire, and the education to make the world a better place. Please know that you're always welcome at the Jepson School. Come to our lectures, our events, and send us news about what's going on. We'd like now to share a video with you and your family members to give all of us some time to think about your time at the Jepson School.
I fell in love with leadership right away. I loved the interdisciplinary studies with psychology because I was debating between majoring in psychology or leadership. And after taking the class with Dean Sutherland, I knew leadership was what I wanted to do. And psychology became my backup.
Well, I took 102 with Dr. Hoyt, not knowing it was a leadership class, and once I realized leadership was a major, I knew from that moment it was the right major for me.
Well, I knew about the leadership school before I came to the University of Richmond. It was definitely a strong reason why I applied here.
What I really loved about the Jepson School is its interdisciplinary major. So I'm never just studying leadership, I'm always studying leadership in terms of something else like history, psychology, ethics, even statistics, and it's just a way to draw on all my interests.
I chose Jepson and Leadership Studies because I think you can use it in any part of your life, whether that's your career or just in normal conversations every day.
Jepson forces you to think critically and constantly challenge your original beliefs and assertions and think outside the box in either a creative way or a critical thinking way.
When I took my second Jepson class 102 with Dr. Hoyt, I was intrigued with the program and decided to continue on, and here we are today.
The Jepson program is what made me want to come to the University of Richmond. I think if you're going to try to make any impactful change in the world, it needs to be through the lens of leadership. And so understanding leaders and how they're effective and how they can get people to follow them is the key to starting any global movement.
This year, I am continuing my internship at the Science Museum of Virginia by continuing to work on a project I started there over the summer, working with the Rice House Papers.
This semester, I worked on my senior thesis in regards to leadership ethics with Dr. Chula.
I'm working with Dr. Hoyt for my honors thesis. We're looking at the influencing factors in women participating in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics.
I'm completing an honors thesis with Dr. Hoyt as my advisor, and my research is about a theory of human motivation called terror management theory.
My independent study is focusing on international relations and the leadership that revolves around different policies.
My research with Dr. Hoyt is focusing on volunteerism and the potential for harm.
So I'm studying K-12 public education in the United States. And I'm looking at how the movement towards testing and accountability has intersected with historical factors to create problems and frustrations on the ground level in places like Richmond. And this relates to leadership because I'm really examining who's making decisions about education. Is it teachers? Is it principals, public officials? Is it at the federal level or the local level? And so it really all does tie back to my Jepson education. I interned this summer at the Boston Celtics, and I kind of learned that there's leadership at all levels of an organization. So not only on the team, but at the upper level management, all the way down to interns. We just all kind of played our own role in this system, and it was interesting to see how everyone kind of made an impact, even if it was a really small one as an intern. I interned with the United States Tennis Association in Reston, Virginia.
So this past summer, I had the pleasure to intern at Penton Professional Information Services.
I did my internship with Greenpeace last summer.
For my Jepson internship, I worked at Dogtown Dance Theater doing grant writing.
I interned at Tech Columbus, which is a company in Columbus, Ohio, that helps small business owners get their companies off the ground.
I did a sales and trading internship this summer at Barclays Capital.
I interned at a marketing firm in Boston, Massachusetts called Small Army.
This summer, I worked with Scholars Latino Initiative with the man, the myth, the legend, Dr. Kaufman. It was fantastic because not only was I working with students and educating them, I was working with Latino communities, and I got to learn a little bit more about some oppression and some kind of modern day racism that goes on in the American South.
This summer I worked for Bill O'Reilly at Fox News Channel. I was an intern there. I worked hands-on with the whole team, Mr. O'Reilly himself. I was one of 2 interns, got to do so much. What I learned about leadership was how, although Mr. O'Reilly and the senior Fox News Channel management were the official leaders in charge, there were so many other different types of leadership roles one could assume at Fox. There was everyone from the cameramen to the producers, editors, even the makeup people there. And myself as an intern, I had many opportunities to step up, prove myself, and demonstrate my own leadership abilities.
The interesting thing that I've learned from Jepson is that leadership is not a position. It's not a title that you're given. It's not something that you take away by any form of assignment or something of that nature. Leadership is actually derived from the individual, and that even as a follower, you can be a leader by your conduct, by your action, by how you choose to work and interact and give back to society and how you function in society.
The world is always changing, and while there's nothing we can do to stop that change, knowledge about effective leadership can really help to facilitate that change and make it both intentional and meaningful.
The one way that we can really make an impact on the universe is to have a positive influence on others.
It's really taught me that wherever you go, you can help people and you can kind of reach out and make a difference in their life, regardless of whether or not you thought that was possible.
I think the 2 main things that Jepson has taught me are teamwork and conflict resolution. I believe that regardless of the career path you decide to pursue, those 2 things are essential. You need to know how to work with people and you need to know how to solve problems.
One concept that will stick with me from my Jepson major is what I learned
in Dr. Chula's ethics class about the relationship between ethics and effectiveness.
Leadership ethics. I think it's a very interesting topic that the Jepson School chooses to teach us, and being in that class, I think really taught us that when you get into the real world, it's very, very easy to have your morals kind of disappear, and I think it's awesome. And going through that class, leadership ethics, I think it just taught all of us that one thing that we should really focus on is being ethical people in life.
What I'll be taking with me after my graduation from Jepson is an approach to solving highly complex problems.
Always think critically about the world and never accept a first answer as given.
One of the most important lessons that I've learned through leadership, especially in leadership in organizations with Dr. Gower, has been empathy. This is a characteristic that I think is important both socially and professionally.
Not to just passively listen to what people are telling you and what the situation is, but being able to listen to what their needs are and not just guess based on what I think they need.
I think I'll be able to have a very well-rounded sense of understanding when it comes to everyone and their ideals.
Leadership is like a puzzle, and it might take a couple of tries, and you might not always get it right the first try, but eventually you'll have this beautiful thing that comes together in the end.
One concept that I'll really take with me is that leaders have to have a vision.
Being in the Jepson School has enabled me to apply my interest in psychology and the social sciences to real-world problems that are going to help me be a better team member, a citizen, and future leader. The things I learned in my Jepson courses really do apply to my daily life.
I would have to pick the idea of authentic leadership and being authentic in everything that you do so that you can lead in the most positive way.
Next year I'll be working at Sotheby's, which is an art auction house in New York City, and I believe that a lot of the things I've learned at Jepson will be applicable to my job.
After I graduate, my long-term plans is to work to solve some of the social and economic problems in India through market-based solutions.
I'm going to commission as an officer in the United States Army and attend flight school at Fort Rucker, Alabama, with the goal of becoming a Black Hawk helicopter pilot. And I will then go to Pennsylvania to be in an aviation unit in the Pennsylvania National Guard. And I'll also take on a civilian job, which I'm planning on opening up a coffee roasting company with my father.
After graduation, I am moving to London. I interned with a company in London called Common Purpose this past summer, and I'm starting to work with them in August as a course manager where I will deliver leadership courses around the world.
I plan to move back to New York City and work for a sports team or league in the sports business world.
I will be working as a federal analyst for Deloitte's federal consulting practice in Washington, D.C.
After graduation, I'm going to be working as a charter school teacher in New York.
This past summer, I was an investment banking analyst in New York City at Barclays, and I'll be joining them full-time next year, starting in June.
So to be honest, I don't really know what I want to do after I graduate, but the really neat part about Jepson major is that I know Jepson will help me long after I graduate, no matter what field I go into.
Now I'd like to introduce Dr. Soderlin, Dean of our, Associate Dean of the Jepson School for Student and External Affairs. Kirsten.
Got really excited. I thought I was getting a promotion or something that I didn't know about. Well, it's a pleasure to have all of you with us this afternoon. At this point in time, we'd like to recognize some students who have been involved with Student Government Association at the Jepson School, with our Jepson Corps. They're our emissary group who speak to all of the prospective students that come to the university and want to learn about the Jepson School. It's far more interesting to listen to our students than it is to listen to me. And we also want to recognize our students who participated this year in the International Leadership Association case competition and the Ethics Bowl team, which did go to nationals. So I have forewarned all of these individuals. I'm going to ask students to come up, and I'm going to have them line up so that I can make them stand and squirm for as long as possible. So I ask if you could hold your applause till the end, and then we can give them a rousing round of applause once we've got the whole gang up here. So I'd like to invite Charlotte Denoya, current JSGA president and a member of the Ethics Bowl team, to come join me on stage. I'd like to ask Louise Anderson, a member of JSGA, a member of Jepson Corps, and a member of the International Leadership Association Case Competition Team. Kyle Leonardo, member of JSGA and a member of the ILA Case Competition Team. Come on. They're going to stand over in the darkness. You're going to run out of space if you do that. Okay. Hannah Hayes, a member of the Jepson Student Government Association. Megan Murray, who's been a member of the Jepson Student Government Association. Matt Groff, who is a member of Jepson Corps and a member of the Ethics Bowl team. Carolyn Florshammer, who is a member of Jepson Corps. Anne-Louise Seaton, who is a member of Jepson Corps. Fred Stillman, who's a member of Jepson Corps. Hannah Liedl, who is a member of the ILA Case Competition Team. Maddie Soskin, who is a member of the Ethics Bowl team. And Maddie Troy, who was a member of the Ethics Bowl team. That must have been confusing to have both Maddies on that team. And Matt Groff, that's right. We had a lot of Matts on that team. So we at Jepson talk a great deal about swag, and this group, I think, has managed to get all the swag we possibly have to give, and our two teams flew all over the United States, so they got a pretty good deal competing at both ILA and Ethics Bowl. But we did want to give them something, so I'm going to go down the line and pass out what hopefully is the alternate gift that none of them have, hopefully. All right. All right, Charlotte. Or you can go both ways if you want. All right. And I also want to take this opportunity to let students in the audience know, if you have not picked up your Jepson composite photo or your internship portfolio or your senior gift, please see me after this event because we have them for you out in the lobby. And so with that, I'm going to turn the podium over to Dr. Terry Price, Senior Associate Dean for Academic Affairs.
Good afternoon. Thank you. I'm known mainly as the other Associate Dean, and it hit me today that it's because Dean Soderlin gives out all the swag, and I don't get to do that. Before the blankets, it was the Jepson hoodie footy pajamas, and then there was the Santa Kitty sweatshirts that you saw one of. And then my favorite was the J. Thomas Wren bobblehead doll with detachable briefcase. But today, I get to give out things, or rather announce things to be given out. The Jepson School Leadership Studies Honor Society, the newest members all have a GPA of at least 3.2 overall, at least a 3.5 in Jepson. We have a very strong class, so that applies to lots and lots of people. So the final criterion is the top 10% of the class. When I call your name, I like to do the opposite of what the other group did and approach on this side, on your left. So here we go. Liz Driscoll. It's the final test. Hannah Liedl. Emmy Morse. Maggie Newcomer. Hadley Pierce. Anne Louise Seaton. Lauren Tafflinger. Don't see Lauren. Finally, Maddie Troy. Now I'd like to recognize the students who completed concentrations in leadership studies. Please approach the stage using the same rules. Just don't switch it up on me. Caitlin Colby completed a concentration in international leadership working with Dr. Hidalgo. Eliza Irwin completed a concentration on law and social justice with Dr. Flanagan. Danielle Schweitzer completed a concentration in leadership ethics with Dr. Chula. And finally, I'd like to recognize the students who completed the honors program in leadership studies, which includes a year-long senior thesis. First, Hannah Liedl, her thesis was called Measure, Then Punish or Reward, Analysis of the Intersection of History and Policy in the U.S. K-12 Public School System. She worked with Dr. Hayter. Emmy Morse, her honors thesis was called The Dark Side of Volunteering When Helping Might Hurt. She worked with Dr. Hoyt, and she also completed a concentration in social inequalities with Dr. Hoyt. Anne Louise Seaton, her honors thesis was called Who Do We Help? How Mortality Salience, Changing Demographics, and Ideology Shape Pro-Social Behavior. She worked with Dr. Hoyt. And Maddie Soskin, her honors thesis was called Mindsets Matter, Increasing Participation in STEM Through Growth Mindsets, and she worked with Dr. Hoyt. Let's give all the students a big hand, please. I now turn things back over to Dean Peart.
Dean Peart always has to move a little box in front of the podium so that she's not so short that you can't see me. The associate dean is supposed to do that for me, in fact. Just kidding, just kidding. It's now my great pleasure to announce the Frederick M. Jablin Award for Undergraduate Research. The Frederick M. Jablin Award for Undergraduate Research is given in honor of Dr. Fred Jablin, a beloved professor and scholar at the Jepson School of Leadership Studies, who had a passion for research and delighted in working with young scholars. The 2014-15 Jablin Award recipient is Emmy Morse. Where's Emmy sitting? A few words about Emmy's honors thesis. Emmy's thesis focused on understanding the role of people's mindsets and their motivation to volunteer. According to Dr. Hoyt, Emmy's thesis advisor, the findings, as she put it, from her research underscore the importance of growth mindsets of intelligence. That is, believing intelligence can be cultivated in people, in predicting whether people believe that volunteering does any good at all. This research is excellent and has important implications for civic engagement and volunteerism. Please join me again in congratulating Emmy. And now I'd like to announce the James McGregor Burns Award. This award, established in 1994 by Robert S. and Alice Andrews Jepson, is presented to a graduating senior each year in recognition of accomplishments of that student. This year's Burns Award recipient has been active on campus and in the city of Richmond throughout her tenure at the university. She served as a writing consultant for the past 3 years and participated in the Sophomore Scholars in Residence program. Within the Jepson School, she was a member of the International Leadership Association's case competition team, and she completed a senior thesis that integrates her leadership work with an extensive study of education. In the city, she conducted research for the Richmond Public Schools about their out-of-school time programs, and she interned with the communities in schools. The 2015 James McGregor Burns Award recipient is a student who has gone out of her way to understand challenges in the city of Richmond through service, her SSIR, as a volunteer, through her internship, and in her research. It's my great pleasure to present the James McGregor Burns Award to Hannah Liedl. And now the Jepson Student Government Association President, Charlotte Denoyer, will give a few remarks.
I'm 5'11", so I'm going to move the podium. Dean Peart, distinguished faculty, friends, family, and fellow members of the Jepson class of 2015, my name is Charlotte Denoyer, and I have had the pleasure of serving as the Jepson Student Government President for the past year. I'm truly delighted to have the opportunity to address you today. I treated this speech like I treated all major assignments at the University of Richmond. I started it last night, and I asked for an extension this morning. It turns out that it was too difficult to arrange an extension, so here we are. Jokes aside, when I visited Richmond, I was drawn to the leadership school because I wanted people to take me seriously. I thought that if I told them I was a leadership studies major, they might think that I have leadership skills. Instead, what always happens when I tell people I'm a leadership studies major is that they say, "So what does that mean?" For all the parents in the audience who still haven't figured out what a leadership studies major means, I have the pleasure of telling you it means that my classmates are thoughtful, inquisitive, introspective, and committed to service. We have an ethical opinion on the trolley problem. We can tell you about our experiences volunteering in inner city Richmond, but most of all, we are involved. Among this group are some of the most dedicated members of our campus. We are writers, actors, athletes, singers, debaters, and student organization leaders. Each of us is unique and brings their perspective to our classroom, and we learn from each other daily. Seniors. I know that we're going to miss the late nights studying in Boatwright or the Jepson Lounge for finals that are seemingly impossible or papers that do not seem to want to write themselves. We are going to miss the hard work and intellectual stimulation that have taught us grit and determination. These things are valuable lessons and memories, but our college learning involves so much more than classes. We learn from our experiences and our friends too. I would like to take a moment and share with you some of the lessons that I have learned in college in the hopes that they might resonate with you as well. The first is, everyone makes mistakes. Be humble and move on. We're about to be college graduates, which means that we're pretty intelligent, but are we perfect? I'm sorry, our parents, we are not. This particular piece of advice came to me in a moment on my drive down to Myrtle Beach. On the same day I turned in my last college paper, I drove 3 friends to the beach in a car ride so filled with loud music and bad singing, it could have been the next Carly Rae Jepsen music video. 2 hours from our destination, I noticed that my car was running on empty. I had failed to pay attention to the gas level. 2 minutes later, we were sitting on the shoulder of the highway with an empty gas tank and no gas station to walk to. My parents are hearing this story for the first time today. Because I'm fully aware of exactly how dumb it is to run out of gas on the highway. But instead of beating myself up over a mistake that only set me back 45 minutes with the help of roadside assistance, I humbly allowed myself to be the joke of the car ride and a good chunk of beach week. So the purpose of this story is to remind you that if you make a mistake in your future job or lives, own up to it, deal with the consequences, because nothing is ever as bad as it seems. My second piece of advice is never strive for normal. Jepson degrees are not normal, and neither are our students. We believe in justice and equality, and we have taken an entire course devoted to critical thinking. Always challenge the norm and work towards a better world. It's why you are a Jepson student. Don't be afraid to fail, because fear is probably the most threatening thing to our generation's potential for success, aside from the fact that we rarely look up from our smartphones. When you graduate, the easy thing for you to do is to keep your head down and do your work. Please do more than that. Find a way to help people, even if it's a small way, and remember, never be normal. My third piece of advice is that your degree is important, but so are the friends who challenge your thinking and educate you on a daily basis. Thank them for the wisdom that they've imparted to you thus far, and remind them to keep making you better in the future. The friends that sat beside us through the tough times of college are the friends that will stand beside us in our future lives. Be loyal to your friends, your boss, your family, and anyone deserving. Loyalty brings respect and gratitude, and when you're rich and famous, don't forget about Jepson and the people who helped you get there. Class of 2015, I am proud of what we have accomplished, and I am proud of what we will do in our lives to come. But most of all, that I'm proud that I've had the privilege of learning from each of you for the past 4 years. Thank you for listening to me, and I wish you all the best of luck in the years to come. Now it is my great pleasure to introduce tonight's keynote speaker. Dr. J. Thomas Wren holds a special place in my heart as he was my first ever Jepson teacher and my main inspiration for sticking through the tough challenge of leadership and the humanities. Dr. Wren always started class with a smile and the satisfying snap of a freshly opened Diet Coke, and ended each semester with a warm invitation to a home-cooked meal at his house. His memorable reviews on Rate My Professor include, "He's the man, enough said," drinks a lot of Diet Coke, and finally, there are classes that you don't want to miss, and Dr. Wren's class is the top of that don't want to miss category. These reviews, while positive, do not even begin to scratch the surface of how great a teacher Dr. Wren is. As a member of his last class, I can personally attest to his intellect, dedication, and readiness to help. His office door was always open to students, and he has been back to support our class through our graduation events. It means so much to our class that Dr. Wren is willing to send us off to our graduation. Thank you for everything, Dr. Wren, and I have a little present for you.
It's kind of like my binky here. It'll comfort me. Thank you for that very kind, too kind introduction. And let me add my congratulations to the graduates and their families here. I am highly honored to be asked to speak today. I retired 3 years ago, and this graduating class were first-year students during my last full year of teaching. In that year, I taught a couple of sections of our leadership and humanities course, one special section linked to the men of the Spinning Your Web Living and Learning community, and one section of the first-year seminar. I'm pleased to say that there are representatives from each of these in the audience as Jepson graduates today, and you are all very dear to me. There's been kind of a fad around college campuses in recent years where students ask professors to give what are called last lectures. That is what the teacher would say to students if he or she knew this was the last time behind the lectern. I was not asked to do that today, but because this almost certainly is my last time behind a lectern, I decided to proceed along those lines. Now, I do not have ego enough to think that I have nuggets of wisdom worth sharing, but there is a message I am comfortable being my last communication to you as you head out to begin your adult lives. It has to do with the education that you have just completed, and it is something I think of as the Jepson way. Allow me to get at it by telling you a true story about two leaders. Both lived in the same place and the same time in Richmond in the middle years of the 20th century. The first was a man named David J. Mays. He was perhaps the most famous lawyer of his day. He was the confidant of the governor and the other members of the Virginia elite. His career is best known for the active role he played in helping Virginia to resist the integration of its public schools after the Brown v. Board of Education decision. The second individual was Edward H. Peoples. No one outside of his immediate family and acquaintances ever heard of him. He was born in Richmond and raised as a white racist. He used to go around with a gang of other boys and harass black people they came across. But eventually he changed and became a leader of those seeking to end racial prejudice and segregation in Virginia. Thinking about these two in leadership terms, both were leaders of a sort, but I would argue that a key difference between them is that Peoples became a moral leader, while Mays did not. Since both came essentially from the same time and place, it is worth our while to investigate why these men turned out so differently. First, let me say something about what was the same about them. Just last year, in 2014, Peoples, who is amazingly still with us, published his memoirs. In them, in a section he titled Learning Whiteness, he described the Richmond of his day. White supremacist ideology was ubiquitous. In nearly every encounter I witnessed between respectable whites and blacks, some overt act, some remark, some tone of voice, or some telling body language instructed me how I was to treat black people. The potency of the messages of white supremacy derived from the fact that they came from the people that mattered: my parents and other family members, their friends, our neighbors, my teachers, my pastor, and Sunday school teachers. The result of all this socialization was that we whites were deaf, dumb, and blind to the black experience. So what we think of today as absurd then seemed anything but absurd to us. It appeared obvious, in fact, the gospel truth, end quote. So the real question is, how did Peoples escape this cultural straitjacket? As it turns out, it was due to the type of education he received. Ed Peoples was lucky enough to get a partial scholarship to the local college, Richmond Professional Institute, and while there he had a transformative educational experience. Let me quote from his description of a sociology class he had his first year with a remarkable professor named Alice Davis. I was awestruck and a bit frightened by how people in the class spoke with such abandon on topics that, if ever brought up in my earlier orbit, evoked only heat and never light. They talked about racial bigotry and equality, the rights of women to pursue abortions, equal pay, and professional careers, poverty and progressive economics. Her classes took my breath away. Peoples then continues, attending RPI began a process of transforming a provincial, naive, and bigoted Southern white boy into a young man with a budding passion for racial justice and human rights, end quote. The education that Peoples obtained at RPI in this and other classes taught Peoples that there were multiple viewpoints and that it required critical thinking and logical analysis to sort them out. Such can be the power of an education, if that education is geared to awaken critical sensibilities and expose one to new ideas and arguments. Such an education can lay the groundwork for moral leadership. There was another element to Peoples' education. In the second section of his book, which he called Encountering a New World, Peoples describes the experiences that he had which did not seem to fit the lessons of his racist upbringing. In one incident, he saw the black bus driver for a visiting white basketball team refused service in the school cafeteria. In Peoples' words, this struck a note deep inside of me. I had spent the past year and a half trying to wrench myself intellectually from the clutches of a racist upbringing, and watching him debased like this brought home how profoundly evil white supremacy was, and that I must do something to protest. Little by little, I became sensitized to the injustice of some situations that I would never have noticed before. With awareness also grew the passion to do things, end quote. What Peoples found was that learning to exercise leadership, especially moral leadership, cannot take place in the classroom alone. Let me now transition to the education that you've received at the University of Richmond, and in particular in the Jepson School of Leadership Studies. During the past 4 years, you have been immersed in a curriculum carefully designed to provide you with the sort of cathartic experience that Edward Peoples enjoyed. At the Jepson School, you have experienced, some would say endured, I guess, you have experienced a place with a deep commitment to the value of an education in the liberal arts tradition. It is the absolutely best pathway to creating individuals who can think for themselves, deal with the ambiguities of life, and come to understand and appreciate those people and ideas that are different from your own. Moreover, that liberal arts education has been geared at every turn to ask you to think deeply about the implications for leadership. You have taken courses in the humanities to help us to explore the great complexities of the human tradition. You've also studied the social sciences, which give you a window into the psychology of leaders and followers, an understanding of the functioning of groups, and an opportunity to see how leadership plays out in our political and social institutions. You've also had the opportunity to hone your skills, the most important of these being critical thinking and moral reasoning. Linked to this academic component have been several experiential endeavors in which you were offered a chance for the same type of life-changing opportunity that Edward Peoples had. Now, as you come to the end of this Jepson experience, I ask you to look back to its beginning. When you and your parents first heard about the Jepson School, you undoubtedly went to the webpage to see what it was all about. There you found things like the mission statement, the purpose, and the goals of the Jepson School, and they undoubtedly sounded like platitudes. That the Jepson School would point you toward the challenges of ethical and effective engagement in society, and that the study of leadership exemplifies the spirit of the liberal arts, to educate people to take an active role in the world. The Jepson School helps students apply their learning for the good of society, and that the Jepson School fosters students' understanding of leadership and encourages them to lead lives of consequence that connect intellectual pursuits with moral and competent leadership. End quote. All this is what the Jepson School has offered you. It is what I like to think of as the Jepson way. But now that you have finished your course of study, you now know something that you did not know when you first looked at the school. You now know that these are not mere platitudes. To the contrary, they are the very flesh and blood and bones and sinew of the Jepson School. You've had the privilege of receiving such a remarkable education. But now I close with something more, a call to action. The real Jepson way only exists if you make it your way and take from this education that you've received and apply it to better the condition of those around you. So take this Jepson way with you as you move into the rest of your lives and make the world, or your little corner of it, a better place. Congratulations again, and thank you.
I'm going to speak briefly without my platform. Let me now, before we close the program, ask all of our graduating seniors to stand so that we can give them a round of applause. Would you all just stand? Now, to close the program, let me just remind you that we have inserts that you can pick up as you leave the room. They will complete the program by filling in the names of those who earned the awards today. And then please join us for a reception. It's in the building directly to your left as you exit, and you'll have plenty of time to talk to our wonderful professors, including Dr. Wren. I hope that's not the last lecture. Thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of the weekend.